The desert had a silence that felt eternal, a silence that clung to the skin and pressed against the chest as though it wished to swallow everything that dared to move within it, and in that silence a child's voice trembled like the last fragile flame of a candle. "No me abandons como los otros," she whispered, her small body wrapped in dust and fear, her eyes wide with the haunting memory of too many footsteps walking away. The Apache warrior who had found her, tall and weathered by sun and storm, paused in the stillness of the canyon trail, hearing in her words not just a plea for protection but an echo of his own heart's deepest wound, for long ago he too had been left behind by those who should have stayed. His name was Tahoma, meaning water's edge, and though his people respected him for his strength, his quiet wisdom, and his ability to guide others across the vast lands, within him lived a solitude that no victory in hunting or battle could erase, a solitude born from the day he had lost his own sister to hunger and disease when no one had come to help them. And in the child's trembling fingers clutching his leather sleeve he saw the same desperation, the same fragile insistence that anyone, might choose to remain. The girl did not know where her family had gone, only that there had been fire, shouting, and the heavy sound of horses, then nothing but emptiness and dust, and in her broken words was the story of every abandoned soul who ever wondered if they were worthy of being held. For a moment Tahoma considered the world as he had always known it, harsh, unforgiving, filled with people who cared only for survival and rarely for kindness. And he thought perhaps the safest path would be to leave the child with the spirits, to let the earth claim her gently so that he would not bear the burden of her cries. But then, as the sun broke through the clouds and lit her tear-streaked face, he felt a force greater than duty stir within him, the undeniable call of humanity, that mysterious fire that asks us to hold another even when our hands are weary. He lifted her into his arms, feeling her small body relax against his chest as if she had been waiting her whole life for this single act of mercy, and he whispered back, in a voice low but steady, "I will not leave you." From that moment the desert was no longer silent, for every step he took carried the rhythm of two lives instead of one, and though the wind howled and the coyotes watched from the shadows, there was a new strength within him born from the fragile trust of a child who had nothing else. As they traveled together, hunger gnawed at them and the nights grew bitter cold, yet Tahoma shared what little he had, his last strip of dried meat, his blanket, even the songs of his people which he had not sung in years, and the girl, whose name he learned was Marisol, began to laugh softly again, a laugh so pure it startled him like the sudden bloom of flowers after a long winter. And it was in her laughter that he understood a truth he had long forgotten, that kindness, even in the smallest measure, could push back against despair as surely as the sun pushes away the night. But the world tested them still, for one evening as they reached the edge of a trading camp, voices rose with suspicion and eyes narrowed at the sight of a warrior carrying a lost child, and men whispered that she was not his, that perhaps he had stolen her, and the air thickened with judgment. Tahoma felt the weight of their mistrust and for a heartbeat considered leaving her there among them, letting the camp take responsibility. But when Marisol clung to him with tears streaming and repeated, "Don't leave me, not like the others," the warrior's heart broke open, and instead of releasing her he stood tall and declared to all who watched, "This child is under my protection, she will not be abandoned again." And in the power of those words, something shifted, not only in the faces of the camp but in his own soul, as if by claiming her he had reclaimed a missing part of himself. The days that followed were not easy, there were illnesses, long journeys, and nights when Tahoma doubted his strength. But every time he thought of surrender he remembered the trembling plea of a little girl who had believed enough to ask for mercy, and he pressed forward, teaching her to gather roots, to read the stars, to sing to the moon when fear crept too close. Marisol, in turn, taught him something even greater. She showed him that love is not reserved for blood, that family can be chosen in the silent moment when one person refuses to walk away. Years later, when Marisol had grown strong and wise, people would say she carried the spirit of the desert in her heart and the courage of an Apache warrior in her step, but she always told the story of the day she was found, the day she begged not to be abandoned and a stranger chose compassion over indifference. And she would say to anyone who listened that it was that single choice, the decision of one weary man to stay, that gave her not only life but hope. And so the message carried beyond the desert, across generations and into countless hearts, that kindness, even when costly, has the power to heal what abandonment destroys, that no one is too lost to be found, and that the greatest gift we can give another is not wealth or strength, but the simple promise of presence. For in a world where many turn away, the act of staying, of holding on when it is easier to let go, is the spark that lights humanity's eternal fire. And in that fire there is always hope, always renewal, always the chance to remind another soul, you are not alone.